So before this season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Started up again, I decided to go to 4 events in a row. The UDS, the YCS, and then the Rosemont Regional and the Detroit Regional, all in a 1-month span every single weekend. And I was excited for that because I didn't think I would do that good at the UDS or the YCS, but I thought I could maybe try to top one of the regionals. And then ironically, what ended up happening was the exact opposite. I did really well at the UDS, getting top 4. I top 32 at the YCS, but I didn't do so hot at the regional that I went to this past weekend. And to be completely honest, I was playing pretty bad, and also I made a pretty bad meta call with some of the tech choices in my main and side deck. I knew that people would be playing less combo decks with the release of the Mega Tins. This was the first event after those tins were released, as well as those promo cards, but I didn't realize to what extent, because Thunder Dragon was just like gone from the top tables. There certainly were people playing it throughout the tournament, and I think one person topped with it, but overall it was almost just entirely control decks and Orcus decks, and I didn't quite realize that going into this event, but I wanted to test some new cards for YCS Niagara. I'll still probably go to the Detroit Regional next weekend. Honestly, the morning of the Rosemont Regional, I like half considered just dropping out entirely, but I decided to still go just to test out, and I mean, I still had fun, but it was going good for most of the day, but then I kind of crashed and burned in the last couple rounds, but I was X1 throughout most of the weekend, it's not a 2-day event, most of the day, and I would say it's weird going to regionals because unlike a YCS, unlike a UDS, I felt very underprepared. I just felt like there were so many random decks you could go against at regionals and people playing like cards that maybe aren't popular anymore. So it's actually, for a deck like Altergeists that is so dependent on teching out against the current meta, it's actually kind of more difficult to play at a regional. I mean, not really. I think if you just play like a more versatile deck than something like Altergeist, it'd probably be easier. But playing a deck like this that is very clearly supposed to be designed just to beat the current meta is very difficult at a regional. So I unfortunately struggled. But also I played really bad in the first couple rounds, so maybe that I was just not used to being that tired, because it's been a little while since I've been to a regional, a few months now. But anyway, let's get into the profile. I'll go through the main deck pretty fast because the main deck hasn't changed too much. I'll talk about what should have changed in the main deck though, but we have 3 copies of Marionetter, 3 copies of Miluseek, 2 copies of Silk, 1 copy of Multifaker. Not as special that I had the Prismatic, although now I can show it off on camera because it looks so nice. It looked good in the deck profile as well, but it was I think it looks good when it has like a light shining on it. So that's what the Prismatic looks like. Now everyone has them though, so it's whatever. I'd also like to say, man, thank you so much. I signed so many Multifakers this past weekend. Like, I signed so many at the YCS as well, but all of you guys coming up to me with your Ultra Multifakers and your Prismatic Multifakers, thank you so much. It means a lot to me that there's like this community of Altergeist fans that is happy that I did so well the last couple weekends. And then the 1 Concrete, and then 3 Ash, and then I don't know why. So I knew Thunder wasn't going to be as popular, but it didn't even cross my mind that I shouldn't play Ogre. But yeah, I should not have played Ogre. This card was so bad. I can't believe I played this card. It should have been Veiler. Veiler would have been a lot better, but there, and yeah, you can still like Ogre some things. Like sometimes against Orcus combo, it'll sort of slow them down, and then against Striker, hitting the multi-roll is pretty good, but man, this card was so bad. There were multiple times in the tournament where my opponent was doing an Orcus combo or a variation of the Orcus combo, and I had the Ogre, and like, if they draw like the Orcus cards that they're discarding like off the Mermaid or whatever, if they draw Nightmare Orcus, if they draw the Orcus Harp Horror, then in those cases, like, the Ogre doesn't actually like really accomplish anything. So there were times when like I didn't even know, there was no like actual good time to Ogre them in their combo. It wouldn't have made a huge difference. And obviously once they hit summon the Dingirsu, then they can just protect their monsters from Ogre. So there was one time, especially in the last round, where I opened Ogre as my only hand trap, and my opponent just opened really well, and if I would have had Veiler, would have stopped most of the combo, but I had Ogre, and I just never found a good opportunity to use it. So this card, super underwhelming, probably wouldn't play it at the next event. So that was like a huge, once again, this is like a situation where I figured that Thunder Dragon wouldn't be as popular, and it definitely wasn't, but I didn't even consider like dropping the Ogres, but the Ogres definitely should have been Veilers. So that was really bad. Then we have 3 copies of Extravagance, of course. I'm still like, I couldn't figure out like the 40th card in this deck. This is the same like 39 card main deck that I played last 3 weekends, and I put in Pot of Duality as like the 40th card this time. The first time I played Sangin, that was awful. Second time I played 1 for 1, which is pretty decent, but as I was thinking about it, there were some times where like I couldn't activate it, or it was like really risky to activate it. And now that people are going away from Thunder Dragons, one of the important things is that as people play other decks, one of the advantages with Thunder Dragons for this deck was that they didn't play a lot of hand traps or any hand traps, so all of your plays went through. But against decks like Orcus and Striker and other control decks, they usually have hand traps, so things like 1-for-1 are a lot riskier. So I want to play a card. No one ever negates duality. I think I got Ash like once, and that was probably incorrect on his side, but the duality almost never gets negated because it's not impactful enough, so at least it always evens out your hands. It was okay, like, as a 40th card. There's no card that I've found that like actually like does the 40th card job. I mean, now I'm going to change a few more cards in the deck, but for whatever this one slot should be, nothing I find works quite as well as like a second copy of Multi-Faker would. It's definitely like a slot where I really want it to be a second Multi-Faker, but I mean, obviously you can only play one, so it's whatever. But if anyone finds like a good idea, Witch of the Black Forest has been pitched to me by a lot of people, actually, surprisingly. There's like a bunch of tech options that people have considered, but I don't know. The duality seemed to be like the most even card. It's good in most matchups, especially now that Colossus isn't as popular. We have 3 copies of Spoofing, 2 copies of Protocol, whatever this card's called, 1 copy of Manifestation, all pretty standard here. We'll go through the traps pretty fast, and then 3 copies of Strike, very good. I almost want to play, well, we're playing 3 Judgment as well. I actually consider like the 40th card, maybe just a card I want to play going forward. Solemn Warning, I think would be pretty good. I think I need like a card that's good against the Orcus graveyard effects. I almost consider like Debunk, kind of, even though that card's not very good, but I think Solemn Warning might be a card that you'll see in the next profile next week, and we'll have to see, but these cards are obviously just like insanely powerful. I will say that the Judgment has gotten worse. I lost to a card that I kept losing to in the Orcus matchup. Everyone's playing that Tenny card, and that card just like rips through Judgment, because like you can't Judgment the on summon effect, or the effect to summon it, because it's not a inherent summon, and then you can't negate the effect in Grave. So that a lot of times my Judgment just got bounced, and it was like really sad. That card in particular like, gave me a lot of trouble this weekend, but it's whatever. 3 copies of Impermanence, obviously. I actually opened Faker Impermanence 3 times. Unfortunately, all 3 of those times I was going first, but they were like, it seemed like when I went first, I opened like a lot of hand traps, and then when I went second, I opened hands that would be good going first. So I was just like unlucky. I mean, this is like variance, whatever. This isn't the. I never pretend that this is like the most consistent deck, so that's why those things happen. 2 Lost Win, 2 Crackdown, 1 Order. Order is always really good. The Crackdown was super underwhelming this weekend. This card was particularly strong against like the Thunder Dragon deck. You could like Crackdown like an LP or Crackdown like the Triple Burst, whatever, and then the LP wouldn't resolve. Something along those lines. It's kind of like when you Ogre the LP, but if you steal a card so they don't have any link arrows pointing to stuff, that's really good as well. And you can do that with a lot of the Guard Dragon cards, because they all require you to have on resolution 2 things pointing to where you summon the thing. So if you like crack down something, it sort of like broke the combo up. But this card was super bad for me. It's okay. It's just like against Orcus, if you crack down something and it doesn't end their turn, then they can just Nightmare Phoenix the crackdown, and then they get their monster back. So like the crackdown did nothing. Lost Win, like once again overperformed. The card is super strong, but I think I would even consider like cutting. I don't know. The crackdown's like, it's good against like some decks, but it definitely was really bad this weekend, I think, overall. And I almost wish I played like a 3rd Lost Win, and maybe that'd be like the Solemn Warning or whatever. But I don't know if that card's like super necessary. But Lost Win keeps overperforming. This card seems like really unpopular in this deck, but I don't really get it. I don't know if people are just like using it at the wrong times. But to me, this card is like always one of the cards that I want to open. It's just so strong, and it gives you so much value because you get a double activations. And then for the extra deck, and this is like the same thing that I played. I don't think it's the same thing. So I cut the Super Poly. So and there's one card that should have been in here that I'll mention as well. So we have 3 copies of Hexia, 2 Link Kribo, 2 Salmon Great Guy, 1 Claire Anushka, 1 Cypherine Lord Lambda, 1 Phoenix, 1 Hida, 1 Unicorn, 1 Prime Banshee, and then 2 Link 4 monsters. So it doesn't really matter other than like the Hexia, except I learned, because it's good that I went to this regional. This is kind of why I wanted to go, just like test the new promo cards. I didn't have an out for the token that Nibiru summoned. So Nibiru, I used it a few times. It wasn't like the best card. I'll talk about that in a second. But the times that I used it, the token was always had more than 3,000 defense, which is you summon it to your opponent's side field in defense mode if you want to. That's usually what ends up happening, because when you tribute Link monsters, it ends up having more attack than defense. But a lot of times, pretty much every time I used the card, it always had more than 3,000 defense, so I had no out to it. So I think that, I mean, obviously you have my Lucic and Silk, but there's one game in particular I lost where I had 2 monsters. I had the Nibiru itself, and then I had the Marionetter, and I had a card in hand, and if I could have made Nightmare Cerberus, I could have killed the token and just like attacked for game, but I didn't have an out to it, and I lost that game. It was really sad. So I think going forward, if I'm playing a deck like this, I need to be playing Nightmare Cerberus just to out the Nibiru token. I think that's like what I need to do. That was a huge thing that I did not even like consider when building this extra deck, and definitely like playing in that situation, I was like, oh crap, I need to out for this. Speaking of Nibiru, I don't know how to pronounce this card. I think I pronounced it 3 different ways so far, so I'm just trying to increase the number as the video goes on. This card was okay. It's a weird card, and I mentioned this in the discussion video a few days ago about this card, but the problem with this card, and I didn't realize it'd be to this extent, but this card existing makes the decks that it's good against not really played. For example, this card would be insane against Thunder. Like, that's what everyone was talking about. You hit like the Guard Dragon cards, you hit everything, and therefore people didn't really play Thunder. Now, I don't know if at YCS Niagara people are going to go back to Thunder. I think that's actually pretty possible, because what I was talking about is that, like, so this card for me wasn't that great, right? I played against like some decks, and against like Orcus it was okay if they didn't have the Ibly, but sometimes they have the Ibly, and sometimes you just like don't draw it. But in general, like, this card was okay, but that's because the decks it was really supposed to be against, like Thunder Dragons, just weren't played. So what could happen is that if people like me play this card and they're like, oh, I didn't play against Thunder, like, I just want to take it out. If they all take it out, then at the next event, those Thunder players could come back and say, okay, now we're going to play Thunder again because no one's playing Nibiru. So it's kind of like a weird situation, but this card for me personally was just average, because mostly I played against just like a million Striker and a million Orcus. And this card's like pretty good against Orcus, but it is kind of risky, because if they have the Lancia, it sucks. Or if they not the Lancia, sorry, if they have the Ibly, it sucks. I was just thinking about Lancia because we have Lancia for the next card. So I played 2 Lancia just because I just wanted to test the big rock. I just want to test that really bad. I don't know. I definitely wish I played 3 copies of Lancia. Like, that's what it comes down to. I don't know if like 3 and 3 is right, or 3 and 2, 2 of the rock, 3 of the Lancia. But the Nibiru was not very good. It kind of underperformed. It was right in the middle. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't as good as Lancia even, because, yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? Because Nibiru is really good against Thunder Dragons, and Lancia actually has gotten worse against the Crusadia Thunder Dragon deck, because they can still like do most of the combo just with Crusadia cards without banishing. So people have been kind of cutting Lancia, but then if you cut Lancia, Orcus gets a lot better, and Orcus was very popular at this regional, so it just creates like a weird situation with side decking. But I think just playing 3 Lancia would have been the better call. But I really just want to test the rock, and yeah, I'll test it next weekend as well. I'll probably still play at least 1 copy, or at least 2 copies, I mean. But I want to test it out before Niagara just to see if it's good. And a lot of people were playing the Dark Ruler card. I think that card is very good, maybe even better than Nibiru in some situations. But because I'm playing a deck that really can't break boards, you can break boards, but it's usually on your opponent's next turn with trap cards. So if I like Dark Ruler the field, I can't really I can like my Lucic then, which is kind of cool. But other than that, it doesn't actually help me too much. And then we have and also Dark Ruler is kind of awkward, because like if I have Extravagance in that card, like they're gonna negate the Extravagance. I have to use it first, so then like that doesn't go through. If I could like Dark Ruler and then Extravagance, that'd be pretty neat. 2 border. This card was awful. It really was. It's okay against Orcus, but once again, the deck that this card was very good against was Thunder Dragon, and no one was playing Thunder Dragon, so this card super underperformed. Not as much as Nibiru, because at least Nibiru was good at going second, but Inspector Border just wasn't that good. I was really afraid of playing against the Striker deck. I played against that at the UDS, and I had a 50% win rate. I played it against it at the YCS, and I beat the 2 in Swiss, but I lost in top 82, and I was just so afraid of that deck, especially with everyone switching to control decks. So I'm playing now 8 cards dedicated to Strikers. So we have 3 copies of Secret Village, 2 copies of Evenly Match, which it does help against the control decks as well, which I thought would be more popular, and then 3 copies of Rivalry. It's just like, I'm just so sick of losing to Strikers, and I still lost to Strikers this event. That was one of my losses. I beat the other 2 that I played against, but I did lose to 1 because I just didn't draw. I was drawing some pretty uneven hands this weekend. I drew a lot of hands that had 0 monsters. Once again, that is just the nature of this deck. If you play this deck and you get discouraged because you draw no monsters, like, it happens, and a lot of times you can play out of those hands, and I did play out of those hands, but sometimes, I mean, if your opponent's hand is just like playable and yours isn't, you're gonna lose all of those games. That's kind of basic stuff here. But these are like the 8 cards against Strikers. Rivalry is really good against like Orcus as well. Sometimes they just summon Scrap Recycler, and this card does literally nothing, but a lot of times, like, they actually don't summon Scrap Recycler. They summon like the Tenyi card, and even though the Tenyi can bounce this card, which is how I lost one of the matches that I played, I lost because I had a Face Down and a Rivalry, and the Tenyi had a 50-50 chance of hitting the Rivalry, and hit the Rivalry, and he won. But I almost think that if people really are going to drop Thunder Dragon as much, and if people are going to switch to Orcus, I don't know, I almost think like Summon Limit would be better than Inspector Border, because it's so much better against Orcus than the Border, because it's not not that the border is bad per se, but I think that it gets outed like more than 50% of the time against the Orcust deck, which is not what you're looking for in a card. So I guess I could just play like Summon Limit or something. But that, I mean, I don't know. The problem is that when I was playing this deck a couple weeks ago, what I liked about it was that like I didn't have to play that many Floodgates. Like the only matchup where I really felt you had to draw a Floodgate to win was against Striker with Secret Village. And even then, I beat the deck a whole bunch of times without actually drawing the Secret Village, just by having Solemns and stuff like that are really helpful. And that deck like lost a lot of consistency. But I feel like, and like I played Borders, but I felt like a lot of times you didn't actually need to draw the border to beat Thunder Dragon. But if I add like Summon Limits, now I'm playing like 8 Floodgates, and when this deck becomes a deck where it's like you have to draw a Floodgate to win, then I don't feel like it's as good as a meta call. I feel like the normal trap cards should be good enough, and if they're not good enough, like maybe you shouldn't play this deck. It is funny, like I'm not trying to say like I'm quitting Altergeists again, but I definitely noticed at this regional specifically like why I originally stopped playing Altergeists in the first place. A lot of people at the regional were playing Evenly Match and Red Reboot again, not just like Twin and Denko and Pringatops, which is what I've had to deal with for the past 2 weeks now. But also like specifically the last round, which it wasn't a good round to end on, because in game 1 I drew the Ogre and my opponent like full comboed through it because the Ogre didn't help against Orcust, and he like set 3 and I couldn't deal with those cards at all. And then like they're playing like 2 Crescendo now a lot of times, so, like I really can't grind through 2 of those cards. It's really tough. And then like the next game I go first and I draw no monster cards, but I draw like Strike, Impermanence, Protocol, Manifestation, and then I just set like all of those cards and I pass, and then he just evenly matches me and I just instantly scoop my cards. It was over in like 5 minutes. And that just like, it reminded me like that was like sort of what happened the last time that I quote unquote quit Altergeist, was too many matches like that where I just don't get to play any cards and then they just evenly match me in the second game. But I will be going to the Detroit Regional next weekend, probably with some new tech for this deck if I even play Altergeist at that, and then we'll be at YCS Niagara later in September. But I'll see you later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.